Good morning. I'm Arjun Malik. I'm a principal at Malik Architecture. We're a fairly old architecture and design practice. My father, Kamal Malik, started this practice more than 4 decades ago. And we've been working together now, along with a team of almost 35 to 40 practitioners. I've been here for the last 22 years. Time has flown. It's been quite a while. So I think today what we're going to look at is using a particular example, which is the Radisson Hotel at Lonavala, to demonstrate some of the key ideas, the core essential thinking that tends to inform practically every level of our practice and our design. It's interesting because, living in Bombay, and I've spent pretty much all my life in Bombay. I was born here, I was brought up here, I did my schooling here. Lonavala was one of the closest getaways from the city growing up. So in a way, whilst we have traveled to different parts of the country and different parts of the world, Lonavala is the closest situation to home that we would consider we truly belong to. So it's kind of its sensation, its climate, its topography, the sense of nature, the sense of hill, this kind of part of us, right? And we've also seen I would say perhaps not so great transformation of Lonavala from really being a nice open space to getting overly urbanized. The density has increased. So a lot of the things that we actually associate with Lonavala are becoming more and more inaccessible, because it's turning into a unplanned and dense city. So we talk about the idea of a resort, which is what the clients were speaking about. You're suddenly looking at a little bit of a contradiction, right? You're talking about multi-storied building densities, but you're talking about the idea of the resort. You're talking about the idea of nature, being open to the elements, experiencing the breeze and the rain and the seasons. But then you get stuck with this idea of a building. So that was really, besides the typical gestures that a hotel requires in terms of its luxury, its infrastructure, etc., right? The real difficulty here was, how do you reconcile these two ideas that actually, at the very surface, don't seem to have a common meeting ground? So I think it's best done through a quick set of drawings. So we're kind of sitting in a little distance from Lonavala city, and that was the main access road, and then there's a little road going inside, and then you kind of had a plot like that. The whole plot was approximately 2.5 acres, right? But in a way it was, in fact, it's got a little stagger over there. Notionally, the plot was divided into A and B, because the center space is a development plan access road to the housing community beyond. So whilst you could use it for connections and landscape, you couldn't truly build there. So your 2.5 acres got broken down to almost 2.2 acres, right, separated into 2 plots. They have height limits of 15 meters. They wanted 100 rooms. We're talking about almost 120,000 square feet of built-up area, so a fundamental issue of density. Now, we were quite fortunate that when we look at the section of the site kind of started moving down from where we entered right to the very end. And I think the other very important layer to this, which I think is very instructive of our approach to architecture, is this word context, right? Which can be objective in terms of the temperatures, the sun, the movement of the sun, the directions of breezes in different seasons, the intensity of the rain, which is a reality of that place. But there's another aspect to it, which is the memory of place, right? This is an area that is surrounded by 5 of Shivaji's forts. It had a language, a building tradition of this region which has persisted through centuries. There are materials, the natural stones, the local woods, right, that belong to this place. So when you take this idea of site, of program, of density, of place, and of memory, right? This is what we've actually used to build up the design, but also in a way to deconstruct the design. So it shifts away from the traditional idea of a hotel, right? And how we've done that is we have broken up the idea of the architecture of the ground and in a way, the architecture of the sky. So when you look at part B, it's almost like the ground developing as a series of walls and platonic ideas of just nice large foundations that have risen up from the earth, because the natural stone that has been used, the basalt, has actually been excavated from the site, to accommodate the two basements in the lower part of the site. So you're kind of seeing a language of walls and foundations almost emerging from the earth, and that has a completely different order. That is organic. It's got this monumentality, but it's also got these voids in between. So it's this kind of balance between monumentality and porosity, right? That is one order. It also very nicely moves into the basement areas, because some of the public areas, the lobbies, the convention space, the banquet areas, the meeting rooms have gone into subterranean space. So we've also translated the idea of site into these levels, into these steps, interpretations of Baulis and Kunds, right? And then you've got a separate order which has been applied to the rooms for the hotel, which then sit almost like these very bold yet porous masses that sit on top of these foundation walls, but they don't follow the same order. Somewhere they realign themselves. What it does is it talks about both a belonging, an idea of the embedded, but it also talks about the idea of the freedom of flotation. So the superstructure elements shift off the grids of the substructure elements, and that's how you break down the scale, which is why the project never feels like a 15-meter tall project, because what you perceive at the ground is more familiar. It belongs to this region. Because the materials are from there, they tend to be perceived more as built landscapes than as a building, right? As you move to the upper levels, we've used thermopine louvers to break down the scale. So it is in a way monolithic, but it's also porous. It has a beautiful interpretation with the light. It also reacts to the program, because people come to Lonavala, they want to see the hills, they want their indoor-outdoor spaces to enjoy the climate. But then when in a tighter site with more density, you start to struggle with privacy. So these second skins that can open and close, with the balconies, the tub has been put outside. We can look at some of the room layouts later. You're actually looking at core ideas that we would apply, whether it's a home, whether it's a workspace, whether it's hospitality, it doesn't matter. These are core ideas related to human habitation, living, and experience, and how we can break down those boundaries between what is built and what is natural. Because that, I believe, is where the true transformational potential of architecture and space lies, is when you make people question these traditional notions they have of this is my space and this is the outside, and we draw a line between the two. I think it is the blurring of those boundaries, right? It is the rekindling of memory, because we've gotten so used to, especially in hospitality architecture, which often tends to become a stage set. We've become used to ornamentation, embellishment, without any real rootedness. Here you connect people to a space, right, that is rooted in memory and is rooted in that place. It changes them. And it's evident in the fact that unlike most hotels, the story of place leading into the story of the architecture has now been appropriated right from senior management to the GM, to the person who serves you, to the person who works there. It's very unusual that they have taken a undoctored, honest and true architectural narrative and made it the story and the soul of this space.